This is our second in the series of webinars for the Michigan chapter of MNATAS. We've been working really hard in our programming group to do things like this, and we'll continue trying to grow and get the word out, but we'll be recording this so you can let folks know too that it will be up, and if people want to watch it after, we're able to do that. So I'll throw it over to Kevin, and we're going to talk about ways to love your work. We know it's so stressful. One, working is stressful, but being in a newsroom is extremely stressful, and it's just ways that we can work together and kind of love what we do. So I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Rhonda. It's fun to be with you guys, and I appreciate you either stretching your day or finding a way to squeeze this into your day, because I know you're all in the midst of doing the very important work that your community needs from you. So thank you so much for taking a moment to talk about something that this is timely and it's important, and this is off the beaten path from some of the things that I like to talk about, because I talk a lot about, big J journalism and ethics and showing lots of video clips and talking about those things. And this isn't that. This is really a conversation about how can we like what we do more. And many of us joined the journalism community because we wanted to do good. We wanted to do well. We wanted to help our community get better. We want to help the people that we serve. And that's all very satisfying work, but I don't think any of us would say that journalism or newsrooms in themselves are particularly healthy places, even when we're in the middle of it and we're working out of them. And now here we are, a year into this pandemic and working away from the newsroom. For some of us, it has been a very lonely time. For some of us, we're not from where we work. We came here for the job. The newsroom family is our family. For others of us, being out of the newsroom means that we're at home with all those kids, the significant other, and all. There's no way to get away from that now, too. So this is a conversation about how can we remind ourselves about the importance of the work that we do, and what are some tips perhaps that I can share with you for how we can love our work and maybe love the newsroom just a little bit more too? Maybe try that. I'll tell you that when I started looking into doing this, for a long time I have done discussions about beating burnout, how burnout is really a health condition. It's a mental health condition. And how can we do better in avoiding that burnout? And I thought, well, okay, we're talking about avoiding the very worst, but how can we keep ourselves from even getting close to having that happen? And there's amazing brain science, actually. Neurologists study this stuff and study the brain chemistry. So a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today is really about how brain chemistry affects our happiness, how brain chemistry affects the way we feel about our work. Albert Camus said this. He said, "Without work, all life goes rotten. But when work is soulless, life stifles and dies." I mean, we need work, right? We need work in order to feel as though we're contributing. And particularly journalists, we are all in on contributing to society. But when work is soulless, when we don't feel a connection to the people that we work with, to the work that we're doing, that's even worse than not working at all, because life can stifle and die. So the first piece is, and this is Gallup research did this. The first thing I would like for you to do as we get started on this is to try to put your head in a good place. So what I'd like you to do is to think about the best day you ever had at work. What's the best day? I hope I see Rhonda smiling. I hope it makes you smile. It should make you smile. What's the best day that you have? And think about what made that day so good. Was it Was it perhaps a story that you wrote, or a newscast you produced, or a story that you shot and edited? Something that you put together that moved people. Maybe it moved people, or maybe you told the story in a really unique way. Or maybe you really made a difference that day. How did the values, your journalism values, how did that play a part in how you felt that day at work? Were you able to successfully achieve telling a truth, holding the powerful accountable? Perhaps you gave voice to the voiceless. A disenfranchised community was made better that day because of the story that you did. Now think about, what can I do to have more days like that? Is there something I can repeat? Is there something that happened? Is there something I can do again in order to achieve another day like that? In this case, was it something you did by yourself, or was it something you did as a team? If you did it as a team, maybe you get the band back together. If it was something you did yourself, maybe you focus on what made that successful. Because loving your job isn't so much about having a good day, it's about having lots of good days. It's about being excited about walking into the office. It's about getting excited about getting up and maybe going into the home office now, right? And turning on the computer and thinking, I want to do this because today I can make a difference. When we get up and we move around and we start going and we dread that moment that we have to get started, then we know something's not right. To have great days, to love our job, to truly love the work that we do, we've got to identify the things that make our job satisfying for us and happy and healthy for us. And we're in a tough place, my friends. I know this. I know we're in a tough place. This is the most stressful jobs in the United States. And this was just a couple of years ago. In 2019, CareerCast did this. The most stressful jobs in the United States. Now look where broadcasters are. Number 5, right after, almost tied with police officers and airline pilots. Think about the stress that's involved in being a broadcaster. Newspaper reporters right next door. How event coordinators got in there, I have no idea, but I guess if you're putting on a wedding and it's going bad, I suppose it's bad. We have one of the top 5 most stressful jobs. So we have to be able to manage our stress. We have to be able to identify within ourselves, what are the things that can help us shed the stress, be excited about work, and love work? I've got 5 things. 5 things. The first is, journalists need a challenge. We need to challenge ourselves. Journalists don't just need a challenge, we all do. We all need to feel as though we're stretching ourselves, that we're getting better, we're learning, we're moving forward. We certainly need to challenge ourselves in the journalism that we do. I show the comfort zone. And only you can decide, are you living in your comfort zone? Because special things don't happen in our comfort zone. We have to challenge ourselves, particularly in our journalism, because look, the best journalism we do makes us uncomfortable, right? The best journalism that we produce teaches us something so that we can teach our community something. We want to be where the magic happens. We have to find ways of getting outside that comfort zone, learning something new every single day, pushing ourselves to go somewhere that's unfamiliar, to meet people who are unfamiliar, to learn something that we didn't know before, to challenge our own conventional wisdom. This is what journalists do, right? Pushing ourselves to do something new. Our journalism, though, isn't the only place that we should be challenging ourselves. In our lives, we should be challenging ourselves, finding ways to get uncomfortable, expanding the frame of reference that we have, expanding the group or people that we hang around with, in other words, getting out of our own echo chambers a little bit, right? Here's where I'm going to challenge each of us too. We have to take responsibility for our own attitudes. the way that we feel when we get ready to go into our jobs or into something that we're doing in our lives. Here's the brain science behind this. Happy people have a much better chance of having a good day at work. So before we go into that home office, or before we go into the office, or before we get into the car, can we try and find a way to put ourselves in a better frame of mind? Take a deep breath, shed the distractions in our lives. Now, for those of you who may be managers in newsrooms, think about how can we make the work day more pleasant for the people who are working for us and with us? How can we find ways to recognize great work, give good feedback, help teach others? What is the acceptable behavior we have in our workplace? Do we accept angry people? Do we accept yelling? Do we accept what we often call venting in the middle of the newsroom, which can often bring other people down? Or do we celebrate success? We celebrate it and help people enjoy it. So challenging ourselves, taking responsibility for how we feel is the number one way we can start moving toward loving our job a little bit more. Number two, learning and coaching. We know that helping people get better and having people help us get better makes work more satisfying. If we're going through the same drudgery every single day, all the time, and never feeling like we're getting better at our jobs or making a difference, that makes it continue to be drudgery. But if we are playing a role in helping the people around us get better, and if the people around us are playing a role in helping us get better by giving us good feedback, by working as a team, by caring about how everybody in our circle is doing, by learning and coaching, we make our world a little more pleasant, a little happier. And if we're learning and getting better, we're going to want to go back to that place and keep learning and keep getting better. So what role are we playing for ourselves in teaching? And what role are we playing? Doesn't matter what your role in the newsroom is. All of you can help one another get better every day. And we can hold each other up. So here's three ways, perhaps. The first is to think about what training can we get? Are there development opportunities we can take advantage of? For those of us who work inside the newsroom, we can look at places like Poynter, like RTDNA, like the Broadcast Association, MNATAS, what you're doing right now. Adding knowledge to the work that you do makes you better. And you'll be able to take maybe some small, I'd like to think you're going to take some small piece of this and use it every day. Something will stick, I hope. But number two, giving coaching. When was the last time you coached a colleague? When was the last time you talked to a writer and helped them maybe craft that line just a little bit better? By giving positive feedback. Positive feedback. Here's a challenge for each of you when it comes to positive feedback. We teach this to leaders in management training when we do it, and it is appropriate for everybody. I challenge you to find one thing every day that you can say to someone and say, let's do more of that. Let's do more of that. That's the definition of positive feedback. That's telling somebody, you did that great. I want to see that again and again and again. So I challenge each of you, find a way to tell somebody, let's do more of that every single day. Building community. Look, we all know journalism is a team sport, right? Journalism takes a group of people to make video and audio fly through the air from one machine to another machine. We need producers, we need desk people, we need photographers, we need editors, we need reporters. We need engineers. We need salespeople to make the business work. We need traffic folks to make sure that everything hits in the time it's supposed to. It's a team sport that we work in. So by making our colleagues better, by helping them get better, we make the business better, don't we? Here's the other thing. When everybody is working at a high level, our jobs get really easy, don't they? When you trust that producer to kick ass on that newscast, you're going to want to be a part of it. I want to be the lead on that producer's newscast because they're going to kill it and they're going to make me look really good. So we want to build that positive community, that group of people that we trust, rely on, that has our back. Trust is earned, respect is earned. Do you have their back? And do you model the kind of behavior and community building that we all want? Managers, are you supporting? Do you find support? Do you get training for your folks? Are you willing to invest a little bit in bringing somebody in perhaps to do some teaching? Or are you asking your folks when they've gotten training themselves, maybe to do a little lunch and learn? Something that helps us all get better. Perhaps a mentor program. I'm going to guess that there's a couple of people on this call, perhaps that serve as mentors for people. Could you take that program into your newsroom? Maybe you already have, in order to develop a culture of learning and a culture of coaching. So that's number 2, learn and coach. Tip number 3. We do need to work smarter, don't we? I mean, we've learned this in the hardest way during the pandemic, haven't we? What we've had to learn during this period of time is mind-boggling. I asked yesterday. I was on the phone with another news director, and we were having a conference call about some training that we're doing, and I asked him. I said, if I'd have told you a year and a half ago that within 6 months you were going to have to produce an entire newscast with everyone on your staff at home, what would you have said to me? What would have happened is I'd have been laughed out of the building, right? I mean, nobody thought 6 months ago we'd be able to do this. But because we were smart enough to think about how can we do it? How can we make it happen? What technology do we need? Because the team that we work around was able to plug in the different pieces that we had to make happen. We were able to work smart and develop a way of producing newscasts without making each other sick, literally making each other sick. The world is full of distractions. Distractions are our enemy. Distractions are the enemy of smart because they keep us from thinking about how can I do things better. Working from home is a distraction. No matter what's going on at your home. If you're home alone, loneliness is a real problem sometimes and can be a huge distraction. Perhaps you're home alone with your dog. That can be a distraction. Perhaps you're home alone with all of your kids, as I mentioned earlier. That's a huge distraction, right? And there's lots of stuff happening around you at the house. You've got food down there, right? You've got the outdoors. You can walk outside. You can take a walk. And I'd encourage you to do all of those things. And those things can serve as time distractors if we are not really organized about what we do. So we need to be smart about how we work, avoiding those distractions, knowing when to take a deep dive into the important work that needs to be done. So here's a couple of things that you can do to help yourself work smart. The first is taking control of the things that you can control. It's been my experience that most of us working in newsrooms don't feel like we have as much control as we probably do. Think about the level of control you have over your everyday, the story you write and the way you write it, the video that you get, the way that you edit it, the story selections that you make when you're having that editorial meeting and talking about what's available to us today, what story stacking you're doing in your newscast. When that first break hits, you have a ton of control over your life. Take that control. Don't cede that to anybody. You have the opportunity to make decisions. You have the opportunity to solve problems. You have the opportunity to develop the outcome of the projects that you're working on. Embrace that. Take advantage of those opportunities. When we work in chaotic places or places where there are rigid rules going on, that can prevent us from following through on things. And we need to talk to our managers about that. Managers, if you're on this call, think about when we have rigid rules in place. This is a creative effort that we make in journalism. When we put rules in, we stifle creativity. Of course, we need rules. I'm not suggesting we don't have those. I'm not suggesting that we don't use that. We have to have that. But the choices you make about where the rules end and where creativity begins will be the decision you make about how well the newsroom functions and how happy the people are at work. The other thing is being honest with yourself. Being honest about what you can control and what you can't. Being courageous enough to be honest with your managers, or managers being honest with your team. And then at the end of the day, being honest with yourself about whether or not this is the right job for you. And I know there are a lot of people who are right now thinking about this. Oh my God, is it Nellie? Happy birthday. I'm gonna stop right there and say happy birthday to she just put up in the chat.
Sorry, I'm late.
It looks like no worries at all. That if there's a great excuse for being late, it's that it's your birthday and you had dinner for a little longer. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
You bet. We have run into a situation, so I'll just seamlessly go right back into what I was talking about. Being honest with ourselves about the job, right? How hard this job is, and we've made it really, really difficult. I know that there are many people in your newsroom right now who have been going through a very difficult time with this and are wondering whether or not this is the career that they want to stick to. It's only human. It's natural. We should not only be helping to take care of those people, but also encouraging them to make the right decision for themselves and for their families. Not every place we work is the right place for us. Not everything we do is the right thing for us. So being honest with yourselves, and rather than trolling it through the drudgery, being honest with ourselves about whether or not this is the right place or the right thing. Face that. Make the decision. I'll talk a little bit more about making those decisions in a minute. So number 3, be smart. Take control of the things you can control in your work, and don't be afraid to. Number 4 is taking care of yourself. I don't know, maybe this should be number 1, because there is nothing more important than making sure that you are caring for yourself. If you aren't caring for yourself, you will find it impossible to care for anyone else. And others will find it difficult to care for you. Taking care of yourself means taking responsibility, as I mentioned, for the way you feel. It means that if you're not feeling good, and you're always not feeling good, you're looking for somebody to help you get past that. That may be a friend, it may be a family member, or it may be a professional. That's okay. These are difficult times right now. And we should be encouraged to go find the help if we're not feeling great about it. But remember when I mentioned the distraction of taking a walk? Take a walk. Get out of the office and have lunch. Maybe get on a Zoom call just for happy hour to have a beer or a drink after work, after work. Maybe you go through and get the dog and play with the dog for a little while. Use that self-care to make yourself happy. Take advantage of the time you have if you're not in the office. Take advantage of that, because there will be a time when it's going to be harder to do those things. And that time may be coming sooner than we think. So you got to have a life. Managing your work-life balance. Look, that's a phrase that you hear all the time, managing my work-life balance. Yeah, I get it. It's important, being able to separate your work from your life. This is a huge problem for journalists, by the way. Happens all the time. That the work and the life blends together. Why? Well, because you're a journalist all the time, right? It's kind of like being a rabbi or a pastor. You know, you don't get to just not be that for tonight. You're a journalist all the time, yes. But you also have a life. You have a family. You have loved ones. You have things you enjoy, hobbies you take on. These are all healthy. If you're not healthy, you can't do good journalism. If you don't get out and have a life and live in the community where you are, if you don't see what's happening and pay attention to that, watching movies, listening to music, maybe going out if you can safely, or doing a call with your friends, unless we're connected to the community, how can we report on it? So we've got to find ways of getting out. Maybe it's getting out to get a massage, if you can do that. Maybe it's getting out just to take a walk. But it's getting beyond the four walls, seeing what is happening in your community so that you can accurately report on it. And then breathe. Got to take time to breathe. I love this picture on the beach. I wish I was there right now. I'll bet some of you do too. That this sense of just absorbing the space that we're in, breathing for a moment, and letting all of the stress try to drain out of us. It doesn't take long. Mindfulness doesn't take a long time. I can't do yoga. My body doesn't work like that. I have a lot of trouble because my brain is going too fast. I have trouble doing this thing. But what I do is I try to enjoy, stand outside, breathe in, take a rest. I hope you guys get a chance to do that too. Managers, for those of you who are on, how do you encourage your team to take care of themselves? Carol Nealon with the Nealon Project, I've worked with the Nealon Project and do training for news directors and news managers. And I tell a story about Carol Nealon, who was news director here in Austin, named it after her after she passed away about 20 years ago. One thing that she discovered when she had cancer, she got breast cancer. And one of the things that she said was, cancer helped me discover life and the importance of life beyond what I did just in the office. Yes, the journalism is still important. And I recognize that so is my life. And so she would go out every Thursday. She would leave early at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go get a massage and watch the news from home. She would sit on the couch and watch the news from home. A couple of really smart things about that. First of all, she got to see her husband more, right? She got a massage, so it took stress away, got to see her husband for a little bit longer, have dinner with him. She also was watching the news as a viewer, not from the office with 4 monitors going, but from her living room with 1 TV on. And then she realized it was so valuable to her to disconnect that way, seeing the news so differently, that she started forcing her managers to do the same thing. And I say force on purpose because it's not easy to walk away from the newsroom at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for people who are managing, for executive producers and assistant news directors. That's not easy. But she made them do it. Only one at a time, once a week, right? Once a week, once every couple of weeks, to watch the news as a viewer, to get out of the newsroom and to spend more quality time with their children, their significant others, their pets, or just time to breathe. So can we encourage each other, encourage one another to take time for ourselves? We need to do it for good journalism. So here's the part where I want to turn to brain chemistry. I'm not going to get all geeky with you. I am not a doctor. I can only tell you what I read, and I believe it. There are a couple of hormones that drift through our body, and they interact in the brain. Some of you who are doctors are going to laugh at me probably, or some of you who know this chemistry are going to laugh at the way I describe this, but it's the best I can do. Dopamine and serotonin. When dopamine and serotonin are flowing through our bodies, it makes social interaction more enjoyable. We have more fun. We smile more. There are ways that we can force our body to produce serotonin and dopamine. The first is gratitude. That the studies that these researchers did found that when we think about things we're grateful for, our body produces serotonin and dopamine. Here's the amazing thing about it. We don't actually, your brain, you don't have to actually decide on what you're grateful for. Just the act of thinking about it is all that matters. It's not finding gratitude that matters. It's remembering to look for it in the first place, to remind ourselves that we have things to be grateful for. So the recommendation would be that before you get going at work, maybe while you're in the shower, you put your head into this place that says, what are the things that I'm grateful for? What do I love about my life? What do I love about where I am or what I'm doing or who I am or who I'm with? What am I grateful for? You don't need to answer the question. You just need to think about it. The other, which seems a little bit different from that, is why am I unhappy? And I don't necessarily mean to make yourself unhappy to figure it out. I mean, if you're having trouble, if you're just not in a good mood, if you're sour, if you're feeling bad, if you're emotionally in not a great place, defining your negative feelings can help you feel better. Defining those feelings. Now, how often in journalism do we talk about emotions as in the way of plugging them up, pushing them down, not revealing them? It's fundamentally against human nature to try to do that. And what we also know is that it's really unhealthy, because when we push down and plug up negative emotions, eventually they're going to come out at some point, and probably at a time that you don't want. Addressing them, facing up to negative emotions, putting them into words. Why am I unhappy? What am I feeling? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I anxious? Not suppressing feelings, bringing those up, defining and describing how you feel helps you reduce those feelings. It gets them out. Again, you don't necessarily have to decide to do something about those things. Just face up to them. I am angry right now. I am angry, and I'm having a difficult time with that. That is enough to help your brain just remove that distraction from your life. Different from just plugging it into the back and having to deal with it later, because you will have to deal with it later. The third one is making decisions. Deciding what you'll do. The act of solving problems drives serotonin and dopamine. I know, I don't get it either, but it does. Researchers do it, understand it. They did blood tests and checked. Making decisions reduces worry and reduces anxiety. But here's the beautiful thing. It's not about making the best decision. It's not about nailing that problem. It's just about thinking about it and deciding I'm going to do something. Something. This is a classic case of do not let perfect be the enemy of good. That making a decision helps us. Being good enough, making a good enough decision pushes us. It gives us a feeling of control. It gives us a feeling of less worry, less anxiety. It reduces stress. We don't just choose the things we like. We don't make choices just about the things we like, but we also tend to like the things that we choose. So making a decision helps us like the decision that we made, and we can move forward. Now, I've got one more. If any of you are human resources people, I'm going to ask you to leave the call. I'm kidding. because this is one that drives human resources folks crazy. So if you are in HR, what I'm going to ask you to do is to lean into your humanness, because hugs are important. There is a ton of research that humans need to touch one another. We need physical contact. We show love. We show acceptance with one another, even for just friends. We show acceptance through the hug, through the touch, through the handshake. Humans need that kind of connection with one another. And if there's one thing that's clearly missing from our lives today, it's this, isn't it? It's that human touch. So we've got to find ways of connecting with one another. Connecting with one another will make us feel better. It will make us happy. And the minute that we can, when you and that other person have been vaccinated, give yourselves a hug. Do it for yourself. Give yourself that big hug. We can do it virtually. We need to touch. It is very clear. Here's what the researchers say. Touching releases oxytocin. It is social exclusion keeps oxytocin from our body, which creates the feeling of physical pain. Social exclusion can create loneliness, can create physical pain for us. So we want to try to activate those circuits in our brains that touching does. Handshakes, pats on the back. For people that you're close to, the effort to touch makes us feel better. Here's the other thing for you journalists. Touching makes us more persuasive. When we touch one another, there's a persuasion that happens. It increases teams' performance. It includes touching improves flirting. For those of you who know these things, yeah, it does. That's why we touch one another. Research shows that we really need 5 hugs a day. Now think about that for a second. 5 hugs a day. If we give ourselves and give others 5 hugs a day for 4 weeks, our brains are happier, dramatically, measurably happier. Now I know we can't necessarily do that right now. So what else can we do? Well, we can find that thing to hug. We can connect with one another with care, whether it's a phone call or Zoom. We can do that too. We can get a massage. A massage works almost as well. Everybody masked up, yes, but that is human touch and it works. Some of you may do this really, really regularly. We can do that. Massage decreases stress. We know that. That's why we get them. Raises dopamine, helps us feel better. Massage reduces pain, not just because it works the muscles, but because oxytocin is released when we do massage, and that relieves pain. So we want to find a way to hug one another. I don't know if this is a little too touchy-feely emotional for all of you. It was for me until I got it all put together. And I started to realize that if I used a few of these little things every day, didn't have to do them all, but if I used a few of these things every day, I found myself in a better mood. I try to hug my wife every day. Makes me feel better. I try to learn. I am a coach. It's my job. It helps to practice that work for me. So let's work toward taking responsibility to making ourselves happier with our work. It really does lie with us. Whether we push off the distractions, whether we think about what we're grateful for on the way into the office or the way upstairs into the home office. Whether we make an effort to do our best work every day. Remember at the beginning, I asked you to think about what makes for the best day you have at work. What are the elements of that? Can you repeat them? Can you repeat them every day? Because if you can, we may come out of this pandemic a little happier, a little more ready, a little more satisfied with the journalism that we do. And that's me. I appreciate you all spending some time with me. This is my contact information. If we ever run into each other, I hope we'll give each other a hug. Rhonda, I look forward to that day. I would encourage any of you to get a hold of me. Email, call, text, match your service. So thank you all. I am happy to answer whatever questions. What questions do you have? Are there anything specific that I can help you with? It would be my help. My pleasure to help you.
Kevin, when you talk about coaching in the newsroom, what works the best as far as the type of, whether it's critique or whether it's just talking, giving them a pat on the back, or what is it that's really needed right now? Sometimes even as I coach students, I try and bring out the positive as much as I can, but then there's always the negative. If there's one negative morsel, we tend to focus on that, and it makes it harder. What is it you think that's the best for those kinds of things?
Well, we know scientifically, right, that positive feedback has a much higher, much more dramatic effect on people. So when we're able to say, let's do more of that, that was terrific. Very specifically, now mind you, very specifically, when we're able to say those things sink deep. I'll bet all of us can remember back, no matter how long we've been in the business, can remember to a moment when our boss came up and said, that was really good. That was outstanding. I like that work. This is the thing that made that. You wrote that intro, or you did that stand-up in a way that really, really moved me. We can all remember that moment, right? We might not necessarily remember every moment that we were told something went wrong. Here's the thing, positive feedback, that let's do more of that is a powerful, powerful daily reminder of the good work that people do and the people around us do. Now, when it comes to coaching as well, that's the daily coaching that you want to do. And I would really charge everybody to find a way of giving each other positive feedback every single day. We need that. Now, the other thing is negative feedback, which would be, Bob, as you mentioned, kind of sticking along and getting stuck on that one negative thing or the number of negative things that are out there. So managers, or if you're doing coaching, the one thing I would advise you of is this. If everybody sees that a mistake is made, why do we need to dwell on it? Because unless somebody says, I made that mistake and I don't know how I did it or how to avoid it again, unless we get to that point, everybody knows the mic got clipped or the tape got rolled later, the live shot wasn't ready, or, everybody, the graphic was spelled wrong. We all know that. Nobody was trying to make that mistake. It just happens. It happens. But if we can turn that error into a learning opportunity, in other words, the person says, I have no idea how that, all right, let's examine that. What can we do next time to try to avoid this? That's turning a negative into a positive. It's turning a negative into a learning opportunity, as opposed to, don't ever do that again, young man. Instead, we're saying, okay, how did it happen? How do we make sure that it doesn't happen again? How do we avoid it? Not seeking, you notice what I did there. We're not going to wrap a problem around a person. We're going to wrap the problem within what happened, how do we avoid it? I hope that helps. The other thing, Bob, is I'm not sure we take advantage of the expertise that's in our newsrooms around us very often. We don't, the guy who writes into sound bites the best, asking that person to do a lunch and learn and say, how do you do it? How do you write into sound bites like that? How do you make that happen? or the producer who always manages to find that great cold open, asking her to do a lunch and learn and say, okay, what do you find these things? How do you think about cold opens like that? We can learn from one another really well. It would be a huge mistake if I didn't say bringing people like me in every once in a while wouldn't hurt either. Did that answer your question, Bob?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Lots of good information there for sure. I think it's, it's useful when you're talking about, I mean, coaching can be really hard, I think, for managers who aren't quite used to it, or even if you're, it can be easy to suggest things or to tell them to do something versus to ask them, how would you do this differently, rather than say, you should do it differently this way because, those kinds of things I found work pretty well.
Yeah, questions are great ways to coach, right? Asking questions. How did you do that? What do you think? How did this turn out? What did you do that made that work? Or what can we do to make sure? Asking questions, asking the people who are involved in the process to think about the answers is a great learning experience.
For sure.
What other questions, guys? Are y'all working from home? Are y'all still working from home? Or I know that several of you are out in the field. Are you working from home still? And do you see hope on the horizon?
Can you hear me, Kevin?
I can just barely, but I'm going to listen real close.
Sorry about that. There's something going on with my mic setup, but I'm kind of mixed. So I'm at home on the weekends unless my co-anchor is off, and I'm in the field 3 days a week. And I have to say that, my question for you, it's a perfect segue into it, is about keeping some of these remote practices, because without exception, every assignment editor, every producer, every person who works behind the scene who's been working from home has said without exceptions, I've just kind of been taking an unofficial poll, that they like it. They've saved on commute times. I will say from my end, being out in the field 3 days a week, the assignment editors are more responsive than they've ever been. The producers are happier. I get full screens back, in in 5 minutes. And I would say that in general, I'm getting more support now that we've been all remote, and I'm happy that my colleagues are happy. There's a certain part of our job that has to be done in person, or it's just better in person. But it's also opened up so much, especially during the political season, being able to talk with national political figures, when previously in previous political cycles, we never would have considered that, because the quality of, say, a Zoom would have been a barrier for us, to even endeavoring to undertake those interviews. But I think the viewers really appreciated the content. So I have to say, like, it's been, on the whole, we're so sad for people who've been ill, who've lost their lives, but on the whole, I feel like it's been good for the content that we've been able to put on the air, and the consistency of it, and the quality and the happiness of my colleagues. And so I'm trying to find a way right now to really convey this to the bosses, because I think they're under the impression that we're all really itching to kind of go back to the way things were. And my experience is that's not the case. So just trying to communicate that well.
Hillary, I don't think you're the only one that feels that way. I think there's a lot. I know that there's a lot of people that are thinking exactly the same thing. And look, I mentioned a call I had yesterday. In that same call, it's funny you mentioned it. In the same call, we were talking about this very situation, and one of the things that came to me was, it would be a terrible mistake for us to try to get back to the way things were, to not take advantage of everything that we have learned about producing news, creating content, the value of having people out at home and in the communities. It would be a terrible thing if we just decided to go back to the way it was and didn't put into place all the things that we know are working right now. I believe we should fundamentally change the way we are producing news in our newsrooms based upon what we have learned during this pandemic. Doesn't mean that everybody has to be outside. I'm not suggesting that, but I am saying that there are really, really good lessons that we've learned. And Hillary, I think you make a great point that there are many who find themselves more productive and in fact, researchers will tell us this too, people are more productive working from home. They're happier often working from home. Not everybody, but some are. And many of them are. And how do we take advantage of that, and how do we maintain that as we go forward is really a great question that I think newsrooms really should be asking themselves right now. They should be studying this, working on it, trying to figure out, making lists. This works, this doesn't. What are we going to keep? What are we going to get rid of? Really great point. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Hillary. There's a lot of people, and I know newsrooms are trying to figure out what's the next step. I mean, who would have thought that, hey, maybe, it's a week you can work, a team works from home and a team comes in, and switch it off to have that option, because that would be great. It would just save, on so many things, and make people, I think it would really make people happy. But it's everybody, every newsroom's going to be different. Every company's going to be different, every person. So it's not a, one size fits all. And I think that's part of the problem, because no one really knows what to do. How are we going to handle this?
And look, Rhonda, as you just said, talk about one size not fitting all. That's the definition of pandemic news producing, right? We used to force everybody, here's your cubicle, here's this control room, here's this, and now we don't have any of that. And we know we can do it. We know that we can do it. And Hillary, as you mentioned, we have access to people we never would have dreamed of having access before, only because, oh, that's Zoom. We can't put that on TV. Well, we figured that out pretty quickly, didn't we? Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate your words.
Well, thanks. What else? Anybody else out there? I know we're at 7:02 here, and you guys have great news that you need to be producing today. So I'll hang around as long as you want, but I know that many of you are getting busy now.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that, thank you again for another, great, webinar. And yes, we're going to do another one June 14th. So mark it on your calendar. And we're going to be working with Kevin on what's next. We were waiting to see kind of what develops and stuff. So if you have any thoughts or, things that you want to hear about, or someone else does, send us an email, and we're going to be meeting in the next week or so, and we'll figure out what that is. So thank you again. It was great. And I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I took notes, and I feel energized, and so many ideas of how to be happy.
Good. Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you.